I suggested opening our relationship and involving our neighbors, and he fake agreed, but then, hello Reddit. First time posting here, first time even using this app, so I hope I'm doing this correctly. Just using a throwaway account just to be sure. But none of the people I know use Reddit. My name is Vera, and I'm 34 years old. My husband is also 34, and we've been married for about 5 years now. So, for a while. Things have always been solid between us. My husband loves me. Honestly, I've never doubted that. I know he would go out of his way to make me happy. He's always done that, really. And yes, I love my husband. I love him truly. I know he loves me too, and that's something I've never doubted for a second. But sometimes love and excitement don't always overlap the way you wish they would. Somewhere along the way, the spark we had started to fade. It's not that anything was wrong in our relationship. Everything was great, really. But great can also start to feel a lot like routine. And routine, well, it can get a little boring, predictable, maybe even stale, if I'm honest. I found myself feeling an itch for more. My marriage is healthy and trusting, and I wouldn't trade that for anything. But I started craving something extra, something to shake things up, to make my heart race like it used to. I know my husband would do anything to make me happy. He's always been that way, so reliable and thoughtful. But still, was it so bad that I wanted just a bit of unpredictability, something that would take me out of the everyday grind and bring back that rush? I felt guilty even thinking about it, but that need for excitement only grew as time went on, and it hit its peak when our new neighbors moved in about 2 years ago. Jamie and Evan moved in across the street, right around our age, and we clicked with them immediately. The four of us would have drinks on Friday nights or meet up for weekend brunches, and I felt a little excited just being around them. Jamie is fun, easygoing, and has this way of making anyone feel at home around her. She's the kind of person you can talk to for hours without even noticing the time pass. But Evan, well, Evan is a whole other story. He's charming in this way that makes him hard to ignore. Evan has this calm confidence about him, like he's got life all figured out, with this laid-back grin that makes him look like he knows something the rest of us don't. He'd laugh at my jokes in this effortless way, and it made me feel interesting and seen. I don't know if it was a crush exactly, but it was hard not to feel something when he was around. Sometimes I'd catch myself looking forward to our meetups a little too much, or my heart would skip just a beat when he'd flash me one of those grins. I don't know if I'd say I developed a crush on Evan right away, but it's hard to ignore someone like him when he's around. He's just magnetic in this way that makes you want to be near him, to hear what he has to say, to feel like you're part of his orbit. He has this relaxed confidence that just draws you in, like he's effortlessly cool and always in control, and it made me feel more alive whenever I was around him. Over time, I started looking forward to neighborhood gatherings a little too much, even more than I looked forward to regular date nights with my husband. We'd all get together for barbecues, game nights, or someone would throw a weekend cookout, and I would shamelessly be stealing glances at Evan far more often than I should. My heart would beat just a little faster when he'd laugh at my jokes or hold my gaze a second too long. Those moments of connection, however small, made me feel something I hadn't felt in years. And even though I knew it was wrong, I couldn't get rid of the feeling because it brought a little excitement to my boring life. I didn't intend to let it go any further than that. I didn't plan on letting it become a full-blown crush. But when you're drawn to someone, it has a way of slipping into every little crack in your day-to-day life. Suddenly, I found myself getting more dressed up for our neighborhood gatherings, maybe adding a little extra makeup or spending more time on my hair, all in the hopes of catching Evan's eye. I told myself it was harmless, that I was just having a bit of fun. But I was ashamed, afraid even, at just how quickly I'd fallen into the habit of wanting him around, of craving his attention. The thing is, when you have a crush on someone, it's hard to hide it. You become overly interested in the little things they do, the small details that don't really matter, but suddenly feel like the most important thing in the world. I found myself always wanting to know what Evan was up to, staying a bit longer in conversations with Jamie just to hear her mention his name. I'd listen intently to stories she'd tell about him. It was like I was collecting these little pieces of his life like treasures. I'd volunteer to help whenever he needed it, whether it was with a home project or some chore that came up. When they threw a party, I was the first to arrive and the last to leave. I was always hoping for a moment alone with him, even if it was just a quick chat in the kitchen or a quick joke and a laugh. It felt amazing, a little forbidden, and I loved that about it. But the more I let myself indulge in this crush, the harder it became to act normal around him. Of course, yes, I felt guilty. I loved my husband deeply. I was committed to him, and yet here I was, entertaining feelings for our neighbor. It felt like I was playing with fire, and every time I let myself enjoy Evan's company a little too much, I would think about my husband and how I was always on the verge of betraying him. I tried to remind myself of the boundaries, but that wasn't helping much. After a while, I just couldn't keep it all bottled anymore. The feelings I had for Evan were like this giant balloon inside me, filling up more and more, and I felt like it would burst if I didn't let some of it out. I had to do something, even if it was just a small step to ease the pressure. So I started messaging him here and there. At first, it was nothing out of the ordinary, just friendly stuff like sending him a funny meme or a casual, "Hey, saw this and thought of you" text. Nothing risky, just enough to test the waters and feel him out a bit. But then I started pushing it just a little further. I'd send videos, lighthearted stuff, maybe some motivational quotes or little things I thought he'd enjoy. And when he started responding right away, laughing at my jokes, or even sending his own things back, it gave me this weird rush. Knowing he was just as engaged made me bolder. It was like he was matching my energy, and that felt, well, it felt amazing. We started texting more often, and the conversations got a bit deeper, a bit more personal. Suddenly, it wasn't just about funny videos or neighborhood stuff. We'd talk about how our days were, what we were stressed about, even our dreams and little life goals. Those chats turned into a sort of ritual. Every time my phone buzzed and I saw Evan's name, my heart would do this little flip. I'd catch myself smiling at my screen like a teenager, and it was honestly kind of embarrassing, but I couldn't help it. And then, as if it were the most natural thing in the world, our messages started to drift into more flirtatious territory. Nothing too obvious, just subtle comments that we could both laugh off if needed. But I think we both knew what was really happening. I'd mention how he always seemed so calm and confident, and he'd respond with something like, "Guess you bring out the best in me." That sort of thing. The kind of replies that made me feel like there was something there between us, just waiting for the right moment to surface. It was such a strange feeling, this feeling of excitement and guilt. The excitement that came from talking to Evan was like nothing I'd felt in a long time. I loved how he made me feel seen, flirted with, like there was this new spark in my life. But that guilt? Yeah, it was definitely there too, nagging at me in the back of my mind. Here I was, a married woman, chatting up the married guy next door. I mean, who does that, right? A part of me knew I was crossing a line, a big one, but it felt like once I'd started, I just couldn't stop myself. Every time we talked, it felt like we were tiptoeing closer to, well, something real. And honestly, I liked it. I liked knowing I was walking that fine line, even if a part of me was nervous about what might happen if we went too far. And the flirting, oh, it didn't stop. If anything, it got bolder. We stopped hiding behind jokes and started letting those subtle hints slip out more openly. He'd tell me how much he enjoyed talking to me, how I got him in a way no one else did, and I'd say similar things back. Our conversations became almost addictive, like I couldn't go a day without hearing from him. That's when I started getting more secretive. At first, it was small things. I'd change the passcode on my phone, turn down the brightness, or make sure to close any texts if my husband was around. But then it got more intense. I started locking my phone whenever he was close by, making sure he couldn't see anything if he happened to glance over my shoulder. If he walked into the room, I'd casually flip my phone over or lock the screen, like I had nothing to hide. Except I did, and that made the whole thing even more thrilling. Looking back now, writing all this out, I can see just how suspicious it must have seemed. All these tiny little changes, things I hadn't even realized I was doing at the time, changing passwords, hiding my screen, guarding my phone like it held some big secret, which I guess it did. I know now just how obvious it probably was, but at the time, I didn't care. As long as Evan and I could keep talking, as long as I could keep feeling that excitement, none of the rest mattered. It finally reached a point where I just didn't care anymore. I was ready to cross that line with Evan, to see what it would be like to move past all the flirtation and actually do something about these feelings. I felt alive, I guess you could say. Not just a comfortable kind of happy, but an excited, heart-racing kind of happy. And that excitement made everything feel even more urgent, like I couldn't keep holding back. One day, we ended up alone together just by chance, and I decided to make a move. I won't lie, I wanted it to happen. I felt so sure it would. But to my surprise, Evan gently pulled back. He turned me down. The rejection stung, and I felt really embarrassed, like I'd completely misread the entire situation. All the messages, the flirting, the connection we'd been building. Was I wrong about it all? Why would he go along with everything only to stop things now? But then he explained. He told me it wasn't that he wasn't interested, he definitely was. But he said he couldn't actually do anything physical with me without it crossing into cheating. That really caught me off guard because in my mind, we were already pushing boundaries. I mean, what else would you call all those late-night texts, the constant flirting, and the attention we'd been giving each other? If that wasn't emotional cheating, what was? Then Evan explained that he and Jamie were in an open marriage, but with boundaries. They had certain rules, and texting or harmless flirting was okay, but sleeping with someone else, getting physical, was something they had to clear with each other. Jamie had to be on board with it, and that was unlikely, unless my husband knew too. Apparently, Jamie would only be open to it if it was truly open on both sides. In a strange way, it made sense, and yet it also kind of stung. Here I was, basically laying my heart and everything else out there, and Evan was holding back because he respected his own marriage's boundaries. It was unexpected, but it made me see things in a new light. I realized that if I wanted this to actually happen, I'd have to make things open with my husband too. It felt like the only way to make it possible without hiding, without sneaking around, was to make it as open and transparent as Evan's arrangement with Jamie. I actually thought about it a lot. Opening our marriage felt like it could be a huge benefit to me, a way to keep everything I loved about my life, my husband, my home, our partnership, while still getting the thrill and excitement that, frankly, I'd only felt around Evan. I know I've been using the word excitement a lot, but that's exactly what I was craving, something new and alive that made me feel like I had a spark again. I wanted to keep my husband. I genuinely did. I loved him, and I loved our marriage. But I also wanted the thrill that only outsiders could bring. So I began to realize that the best way to have both would be to try and convince my husband to open our marriage. It sounded ambitious, even unrealistic, considering I knew him so well. My husband wasn't the type to go for anything unconventional. To him, our relationship had always been about commitment and monogamy, and he wasn't one to take New Age ideas seriously. I couldn't picture him even entertaining the idea, but I was determined to try. I decided to start slow, planting little seeds to get him thinking about it. I began casually mentioning Jamie and Evan's open marriage, always emphasizing how happy they seemed and how much it brought to their relationship. I'd drop little comments about how freeing it must be to have that kind of trust and openness. I talked about all the benefits I could think of, hoping something would click for him. But my husband just didn't seem to get the hint. He'd listen, nodding politely, and then change the subject or shrug it off. It was as if the idea was so far from what he'd ever considered that he couldn't even process it. I realized that being subtle just wasn't going to work, so one night I decided to lay everything out on the table. We sat down and I began to explain. I was nervous, but I tried to be as honest and open as I could. I told him I loved him, that our marriage was solid, but I also wanted a bit more excitement and variety in my life. I explained that Jamie and Evan's arrangement had got me thinking. Maybe that kind of openness could be what we needed to bring a new spark to our marriage, too. He didn't take it easily. At first, he was hurt, even offended. He reminded me that we were happy, and that he didn't understand why I felt like we needed anything more. And I couldn't exactly argue with him on that. We were happy, outwardly at least. But I told him that inside I was feeling a little stagnant, like something was missing. I tried to explain how much I loved him, how I wouldn't trade what we had for the world, but that a little excitement from others might actually make me feel more fulfilled and even more committed to our life together. Eventually, after what felt like hours of talking, he agreed to give it a try. It was more a reluctant, if this is what you need to be happy, than a full endorsement, but it was something. I could hardly contain my excitement. I felt like I'd won, that this was my chance to finally have it all. I immediately told Evan, and he was happy for me too. It felt surreal, like everything was lining up exactly as I'd hoped. I could finally have what I wanted without worrying about my husband's feelings or battling with my conscience. Sure, my husband wasn't exactly thrilled about this new arrangement, but I'd convinced him, and that was all I needed. Now I could have everything: my husband, my stability, my life as it was, and also the excitement that Evan brought me. It felt like I'd cracked some kind of code, like I'd found a way to have it all. It didn't take long after we officially opened the marriage for things with Evan to go to the next level. A few days in, I suggested we meet up, and it happened. Evan and I became full-time sexual partners. There was no hesitation, no awkwardness. We were just picking up where all our secret messages and flirtations had left off. It was good. I was completely swept up in it. But I noticed that my husband wasn't really exploring this open marriage the way I was. I hadn't seen him chatting with anyone, hadn't heard him mention meeting someone, or even hinting at being interested in anyone else. I could tell he wasn't thrilled with the whole idea, but he also wasn't going out of his way to find excitement elsewhere. And strangely, that actually made me happy. In a weird, almost selfish way, I liked that he wasn't doing what I was. I still loved my husband deeply, and the thought of him with someone else didn't sit well with me. I realized I never would have even considered an open relationship if it weren't for Evan, if it weren't for the pull I felt toward him. So seeing my husband remain loyal, even in an open arrangement, felt like reassurance that I could have my cake and eat it too. I could have my husband, who was still there and committed, and I could have Evan on the side. It was like everything had fallen into place just as I wanted. This setup allowed me to live my best of both worlds fantasy without any of the drawbacks I'd feared. My husband was steady and reliable, there when I needed him, and Evan was the excitement, the spark I craved. In my mind, it was perfect until it wasn't. It all started feeling strange when I noticed my husband acting distant, busier than usual. He'd been coming home late, keeping to himself, and there was an unusual quietness about him. But I was too wrapped up in my own world to give it much thought. I was still in the honeymoon phase with Evan, so I just brushed it off as work stress and figured it would pass. Looking back, I can't believe I missed the signs. Then, a couple of weeks ago, he mentioned casually that he'd gone to pay for the new house we'd been looking at. We'd been talking about upgrading, especially since we planned to start trying for kids soon. I had already seen the house and loved it, so I was thrilled at the thought of finally making it our own. But the way he told me he'd gone to sign papers without me, it felt strange. We'd always made big decisions together, so it hurt that he went ahead on his own. I told myself it was fine, that maybe he was just eager to surprise me. I ignored the sinking feeling in my stomach and went on with my day. And then 2 weeks ago, everything came crashing down. I had just gotten back from a day out with Evan, feeling like everything was perfect, and the moment we pulled up to my house, I noticed something was off. My things were piled up on the porch, bags and boxes thrown out haphazardly. My heart stopped. I thought I was imagining things, that maybe there had been some mistake. But when I tried to open the door, the locks had been changed. Through the window, I could see the living room was cleared out like my entire existence had been erased from our home. I called my husband's phone. My hands were shaking, but he didn't pick up. I called again and again and again, text after text, pleading for an explanation, but he didn't respond. I started having a panic attack. I'd been blindsided, completely cut out of his life without warning. I didn't know what to do, where to go. In a split-second decision, I went to Evan's place, hoping that maybe he and Jamie would let me stay the night. But when I knocked on the door, Jamie answered with Evan behind her, and she looked uncomfortable. She told me that it wasn't a good idea for me to stay with them and wished me well. She even closed the door with an awkward smile. I was left standing there, stunned. Evan wouldn't even look me in the eye. Suddenly, I was alone, with nowhere to go, and reality began to sink in fast. I had no close friends nearby, no one to turn to. My husband and I had moved here for his job, and since then, he'd been my entire support system. And now he was gone, and I had nothing. For the past 2 weeks, I've been living out of a hotel room watching my savings vanish. My husband cleared out our joint account and took almost everything. I have enough to cover a few more nights here, but after that, I don't know what I'm going to do. I keep trying to reach him, hoping he'll at least give me a chance to talk, but he's completely shut me out. The person I thought I knew, the man who was my husband, is just gone. I'm scared. I don't know what to do. My family lives in another state, and they don't even know what's happening because I haven't told them yet. I feel so ashamed. I don't have the money to keep staying here, and I don't have anyone else I can turn to. I keep asking myself how I let things get to this point, how I could have ignored the obvious signs. I was so focused on chasing excitement with Evan that I didn't see the damage I was causing until it was too late. Update. Hello Reddit, it's me again. So, this post ended up blowing up way more than I expected. I mean, I thought I'd get a handful of comments or maybe a couple of DMs, but I didn't think it would turn into this. And yeah, I know the responses weren't exactly warm, to put it mildly. But I want to address a few things, particularly this recurring comment. Is this fake? Honestly, a lot of people have called me out saying this has to be fake, that I sound delusional or psychopathic, or that I'm just a rich bee asterisk 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 looking for sympathy. First of all, ouch. I definitely wasn't expecting to get roasted for being out of touch, and hearing people say I'm some kind of heartless villain wasn't exactly on my bingo card. But here's the truth. This is real. Unfortunately, it's all too real. And maybe I do come across weird or cold, but I'm just telling my story as it happened. No edits. And yes, a lot of you were right. This whole mess really is over. My husband was apparently done with me a long time ago. So many people pointed out that I sounded insensitive in my main post and accused me of not being over Evan. I get why you might think that, but the reality is, I am over him. The reason I shared all the details was to be transparent. I didn't want to cherry-pick parts to make myself look better or manipulate the story. I was just trying to give the whole picture since I thought, hey, it's anonymous. Oh, and to those of you suggesting I sleep in my car, well, that's not an option either because I don't have a car anymore. When I went out with Evan that night, we took his car, and by the time I got back, both my car and my husband's were gone, along with everything else. My stuff was on the porch, the locks were changed, and it was clear my life had just been erased. Then, when I finally got Evan on the phone, he confirmed that Jamie had seen movers at the house. So yeah, my husband had actually moved out with all of our things, and I was locked out with nothing. As if that wasn't enough, when I finally managed to track him down, my husband didn't just sit me down to talk, he came over with his lawyer. Imagine that. He must have thought I'd try to manipulate him or say something incriminating, but whatever the reason, there he was, with his lawyer by his side. They served me the divorce papers right then and there. I tried to talk to him, to explain, to say I was sorry. But he was ice cold. He told me that he'd known about Evan long before I'd even asked for an open marriage. He'd seen our texts, the emotional affair before the physical one, and he'd been planning this exit ever since. Turns out he only agreed to open things up so he'd have time to get everything ready behind my back and leave me with nothing. I begged him for another chance, pleaded with him to at least talk things over, but he shut me down, saying there was nothing left to fix and that he didn't want any part of it. He's already moved into the new house, the one we were supposed to live in together. He was almost gleeful, letting me know that he's loving his new life, and honestly, I can't even blame him. He planned this all out perfectly, and he got the last word. It hurts, but I guess it's exactly what I deserve. As for Evan, that's another disaster. A couple of days after the talk with my husband, Evan reached out, and I thought maybe he wanted to talk things over, offer me some kind of support. But no, he had the nerve to say he still wanted to keep our relationship going. Really? After all this, after leaving me to fend for myself when I had nowhere to go, he wants to act like he's some hero swooping in to continue what we had. I told him exactly what I thought of him, that he was spineless and pathetic for not even standing up for me, for abandoning me the moment things got real. And then I blocked him. Good riddance to that. So here I am, stuck between hotel rooms and wondering if I'll have to start couch surfing or go to a homeless shelter soon. I don't know anyone here. My entire support system was my husband, and he's gone. My family lives in another state, and I've barely told them what's going on because, honestly, I'm ashamed. I don't know what to do from here, and I have no idea how to even start rebuilding. This is the reality I'm facing, as messy and horrible as it is. Thanks to everyone who gave me honest feedback. It's hard, but I think I needed to hear it. Update. Hey Reddit, it's been a while. What a whirlwind of a life I've been living. Crazy, very crazy. A lot has happened since my last update, and I feel like I need somewhere to vent. From leaving that last hotel to being homeless, with no place to sleep except for the streets, it's been one nightmare after another. You have no idea how hard it is to live like this, still having to clock in at work, trying to look at least semi-presentable, trying to hold myself together. If you've never been homeless, let me be the first to tell you, it's hell. But add a divorce I never wanted to the mix, and it's like a bottomless pit of regret. Turns out, what I risked everything for, well, it wasn't worth it. Not even close. If I could go back in time, I'd have cut Jamie and Evan out of my life before it even started. I miss my husband desperately, more than I ever thought possible. I look back now and wonder how I ever thought it was worth it to jeopardize what we had. Now I'm just a shell of who I used to be, barely functional. I've turned into a zombie at work, dragging myself through each day just to make a paycheck because I literally have no other choice. Quitting would mean begging on the streets. If I want to get out of this hellhole, I need that money. So I'm searching for jobs that might come with accommodation, anything to get me off the streets. I'm even willing to do the bare minimum as long as I can just have a bed and roof over my head. If something comes through, I'll put in my 2 weeks and leave this current job, which I can barely keep up with as it is. But for now, every night is just me, trying to find a spot that's safe enough to sleep without being disturbed. And every morning is a fresh wave of shame when I have to go to work pretending like I'm okay. I tried reaching out to my family, hoping for a miracle, maybe a way to get back home. But they told me that if I want a plane ticket, I have to cover the cost. It's not like I have that kind of money right now. I'm already drowning in legal fees with this divorce. They sent me a small amount, barely enough for a couple of nights in a cheap hotel. But they think I should quit my job, finalize my divorce, and just come back home. In theory, it sounds simple, but I know my family. The moment I'm back, they'll control everything, shame me, and guilt trip me over this. Every single misstep will be used as a weapon, and I'll be trapped all over again. As bad as things are now, at least I'm free from that. So yes, I am suffering on my own terms, but at least I can barely think about anything besides the regret gnawing at me. If anyone out there is in a position like mine, if you're even considering making the choices I made, please think twice. Please learn from my mistake. If I could rewind time, I'd do it in a heartbeat. Hell, I'd give up anything to go back and make different choices. Update. Hey Reddit, it's me again. It's been a while, and honestly, I wasn't even sure I wanted to update. The shame I've been feeling is overwhelming. So many of you commented last time, "I told you so," or "Karma's come for you." I get it, I did wrong by my husband. But the level of judgment was just brutal. For the longest time, I didn't want to come back because I felt like the entire internet had just piled on top of me. But then I kept getting DMs asking for an update, and apparently my post made it to Best of Reddit Updates and was marked as inconclusive. So here I am, to close that chapter for good. First off, the divorce is finalized. That's probably not shocking to anyone reading this. It was quick, barely took an hour in court. I thought I'd at least get something out of it, but I walked away with nothing. No property, no spousal support, nothing. Turns out the house wasn't even in my name. For years I thought I had a claim to it, that it was a part of our marital assets, but legally it wasn't. I wanted to fight for it, but between legal fees and just everything, I couldn't even afford to put up a battle. It's sold now, or maybe he's renting it out, but that chapter's closed too. I thought I'd have something to hold on to, but it all slipped away. Financially, I'm drained. I have a job, but it doesn't pay enough. I was offered a new position with accommodations, but it paid barely minimum wage, so I had to turn it down. Staying at my current job hasn't been much better either. I got demoted because my performance dropped. Big surprise, considering I was in the middle of a divorce. The demotion hit me hard, but it's still more than what the other job offered. I'm stuck in this loop where I can't afford to lose this job, but I'm struggling to make ends meet. So now I'm living in a tiny apartment that feels smaller than the closet in my old home. I wish I were exaggerating, but this place is barely big enough to breathe. The window's so tiny I can't even get proper sunlight in. And yet, I'm struggling to pay the rent here. I tried opening a GoFundMe just to get some help, but no one donated, not even $1. I know things are tight for everyone, but seeing absolutely zero support was a punch to the gut. Mentally, I'm barely holding it together. I'm just existing at this point. I'm not really living. I'm just here, struggling through each day, trying to make it to the next. I think back to that one mistake, and it haunts me how much damage it's done to my life. I know I messed up. I don't need Reddit to remind me. And trust me, I would undo it in a heartbeat if I could. But it's crazy how one bad decision can send your life spiraling down so fast that you don't even know what hit you. Honestly, to anyone reading this, if you're ever even close to making the same mistake, please think twice. Learn from what happened to me. It's so easy to think you can fix things, that you can handle the fallout, but once it all comes crashing down, you realize you can't. I lost everything, the home I thought was mine, the life I thought was stable, and even my own self-worth. Now I'm in a place where I'm struggling to even survive. And yeah, Reddit, I know you all see me as the villain in this story, and maybe I deserve that. I made a mistake. I hurt someone who trusted me. I get it. But I'm still human. I'm still dealing with the consequences every single day. So if anyone reading this wants to see it as me getting my just desserts, then congratulations. You got what you wanted. I'm living through it. So that's where I am. Nothing uplifting, nothing redemptive. Just reality. I don't know where I'll end up, but I guess this is goodbye.